to pause or not to pause? That is the question. And I'm going to try to answer it as best I can right after this. Hey, this is Steve from HitItLonger.com. I continue my journey to hit the ball longer and straighter from tee to green than I ever have before. If you're on the same journey, I hope you hit like and subscribe. So if you've studied golf swings for any time, maybe on YouTube, maybe you have some favorite guys you like to follow on TV, you might have noticed that some of them will have a maybe brief but distinct pause at the top of the swing. And some other ones look like they kind of blend the downswing right at the end of the backswing, where there's kind of a whip action. So let's look at a couple examples of each. Guys you might see pausing at the top would be, let's look at some old school guys like a Davis Love III, Payne Stewart, Fred Couples, definitely. Some guys, and they all produced a ton of speed. Jack Nicklaus, Sam Snead, all guys who were a little bit more pausey at the top, starting down more uniformly. Of course, the other side of the coin, those guys aren't slouches. Ben Hogan, not really that much of a pauser. He had a little bit of that whipping kind of transition. How about the world's #1 right now, Jon Rahm? He's on a huge, just tearing it up. Huge win streak right now. Very short and very kind of whippity at the top. So definitely the opposite of a pause. So that's pretty good company there, isn't it? You might also put Lee Trevino in that category. So you get Hall of Famers on both sides of the coin. So when a student comes to me and they ask me if they should fix a certain aspect to their swing, I think the first question I ask myself and often ask them is there somebody somewhere making $1 million a year doing it that way? So the answer sometimes can be that it's quite viable, it's functional. Is it ideal? Well, that's going to be up for debate maybe forever. But as long as someone is doing it, it's probably in play. Now, will it function for you? Well, some people swing better with a pause, some swing better without. Now, here's why. I'll tell you why. I would favor the pause method. So I'm going to use the orange whip here to demonstrate this, and the forces acting on the shaft, and because this has such a bendy shaft, you'll be able to see the effects on this, and the head's really heavy too, compared to a driver, which you really have to slow it down to see, but you can obviously see it here. And I'll slow both of these swings down, and you're going to see a just dramatic difference in the action or the forces on the shaft. So let's first do the pause swing. It's like a pause, like if you watched a bungee jumper, and they spring back up, and on their way back up again, they hit just that brief weightless moment where it appears as though they're pausing or motionless, and then they start to accelerate back down. So it's just for the briefest moment, their acceleration is 0. Very slow, and then it starts to increase again, but it's a brief pause. So that would be something like this, and pause, and come down. So very smooth looking swing. Now, if you watch that swing in slow motion, you'll see that the club shaft has a bit of a droop because it's weighed down by the orange ball. So at the top, it's got a little droop, but almost immediately, starting about here, the club shaft now is not bent anymore. In fact, it's being pulled outwards into a taut position all the way through my downswing, which means that I'm not applying force across the shaft this way, but instead, the predominance of my force is seeking outwards, pulling the club. So anything I'm acting on the force like this is being overcome by the forces pulling outwards from the outwards throw I'm giving this thing. You see again, that shaft is extremely straight through most of the downswing. Well, Now I can show you the no pause swing, and we'll look at that in slow motion. Be very obvious with the stick like this if you're making a no pause swing. That looks something like this. Okay, and we look at that in slow motion. You see the shaft actually hit my shoulder. So what I tried to do was step into my transition, maybe when the club was only about halfway back, started moving into my pivot coming down while the club was still having momentum going back. So I'm just cutting off the momentum of the backswing a bit sooner, but it finishes here, but I'm already around here. But you can see on the slow-mo how much narrower that made the arc of the club head traveling this way before it finally sprung back again. So the method I teach is definitely more on the pause side of things. It doesn't mean if somebody came to me and they had a no pause style swing that I would necessarily ask them or work with them to change that. It all depends. It depends on so many variables. But I can tell you this, and you can do a survey for yourself at home. Yes, of course, you're going to see guys on TV like Jon Rahm working the more whippy style action with the no pause and playing ridiculous golf, right? But next time you're on the range, walk up and down the range. See if you can find a couple of each style. What I would see, I would tell you if I did a big survey of 100 golfers of each, I would bet you that the guys with the whippier no pause swings have a much more difficult time keeping the ball down the middle all day. That they tend to have the bigger miss right and left, the more abrupt hook or the more abrupt slice, and their swings hitting the ball straight becomes a little more of a temperamental, hot and cold kind of event compared to the guy who is swinging in tempo with the pause. Can't prove any of this, it's just my intuition from observing a lot of golfers, but it seems to me as if I became a master of ball striking first, in other words, I'm below a scratch golfer, I would learn first how to make the pause swing. So if I'm an amateur golfer, I haven't really ever mastered the art of ball striking yet, which would lead me to a below scratch handicap. I would do the pause way first, get my handicap to be that good, and then I might start to play with the idea of more of the Hogan tempo or the Jon Rahm, a more whipping tempo where the downswing and the transition kind of is interrupted. The backswing gets interrupted by the step and turn of the body, and it kind of cuts it off and makes a little bit more of a violent change of direction. Seems to me like that style will be mastered best and maybe only by a much more highly skilled golfer or swinger of the club. So what I would encourage anyone out there who's looking to improve to have a rhythmic 3-to-1 or pendular rhythm with a very, very brief pause, not a stop where you lose all the momentum or forces in your swing, which would look something like this. I think that's much too long to pause, and it will lead you to being out of a good rhythm and tempo, but instead one that has a simple brief pause like this. Something like that. I think it'll lead you to more square club faces, better balance, more effortless power in the end. Hey, I hope this tip helped some of you out there. If it did, I hope you'll give me a like and subscribe. I'm Steve from hititlonger.com. Don't forget to head over there and see some more videos and articles that I think will help you. And as usual, I'll either see you in the next video or I will see you longer and straighter down the fairway. Everybody take good care.